The Elari were a race that believed emotions were weakness. They were beings of pure logic, calm, cold, and precise. They never loved, never hated, never cried. To them, the human race was a strange puzzle of chaos and contradiction. Humans smiled while hurting, forgave when broken, and laughed through tears. For the Elari, such behavior was unthinkable. Lyra, a young telepath of the Elari Order, was chosen for a special assignment on Earth. Her mission was to study human minds, to understand what made them so unpredictable. She had always believed emotions were useless noise. Yet deep inside, a quiet part of her was curious. What did it really feel like to be human? When she arrived at the Earth research base, she was told about her new subject, a human soldier named Evan Cole. He had survived a disaster on one of the Elari human joint missions, a mission that had left his entire team dead. The doctor said he carried heavy trauma, but his mind refused to break. That made him interesting to the Elari. They wanted to know why. Lyra stepped into the quiet room where Evan rested. The faint sound of heart monitors filled the air. He sat by the window, staring at the sunset beyond the glass. His body was scarred, his uniform folded neatly on a chair. His eyes, tired yet alive, turned toward her. "You must be the alien doctor," he said, his voice calm but distant. "I am not a doctor," Lyra replied, her tone flat. "I am a cognitive observer. My task is to study your mind." Evan smiled weakly. "So, you'll read my thoughts?" "Yes," she said. "You will not feel pain." He nodded slowly. "Go ahead then. I've got nothing to hide." Lyra placed 2 fingers on his forehead and closed her eyes. Instantly, the world around her vanished. She was pulled into a storm of memories, images, sounds, emotions so strong that they made her heart tremble. She saw flashes of battlefields, burning metal, soldiers crying out in fear. She felt Evan's pain, the guilt that crushed him every time he remembered his fallen friends. It wasn't just memory, it was emotion, raw, wild, uncontrollable emotion. She wanted to pull away, but something held her there. She saw him crawling through the wreckage, blood on his hands, whispering the names of his team. She felt the helplessness, the anger, the small flicker of hope that refused to die inside him. When she finally broke the connection, she gasped as if she had been drowning. Her whole body shook. "What was that?" she whispered. Evan looked at her quietly. "That was my life," he said. "Messy, huh?" She stared at him, speechless. You carry so much pain. And yet, you still live. Why?" Evan took a deep breath, his eyes distant. "Because if I give up, their memory dies with me. I keep going. For them." His words struck something deep inside her. She didn't understand it, but it felt right. Beautiful, even. Later that night, Lyra sat alone in her quarters. Her mind was still full of what she had seen. The Elari taught that feelings were poison, that emotion blurred logic. But now she wasn't so sure. What she had felt inside Evan's mind wasn't weakness. It was strength, the kind that refused to give up even when everything was lost. She looked at her reflection in the mirror. Her face was calm, her silver eyes emotionless, just like all Elari. Yet, for the first time, she noticed something different, a faint warmth behind her cold gaze. It frightened her. She returned to Evan's room the next day. He was awake, humming softly to himself. "Why do you sing?" she asked. He smiled. "It helps. Sometimes when the pain's too loud, you sing louder." She didn't understand, but she wanted to. She wanted to understand why humans could hurt so much and still smile, why they could love even after losing everything. When she touched his mind again, she didn't just see thoughts. She saw heart, a mother's embrace, a friend's laughter. The sound of rain on metal roofs, warmth, kindness, loss, and love, all tangled together in something fragile yet powerful. When she ended the link, a single tear fell from her eye. The first tear an Elari had shed in centuries. Evan saw it and whispered softly, Careful, Lyra. You might be turning human. She didn't know whether to be afraid or amazed. All she knew was that something inside her had changed forever. The next morning, Lyra entered the human's room quietly. Evan was sitting on his bed, staring at the sunlight falling through the window. He looked peaceful, but when she looked closer, she saw something else behind his calm face, a deep sadness that clung to him like a shadow. He turned when he heard her steps. "You came back," he said softly. "I must complete the study," Lyra replied, her voice calm but unsure. Evan smiled faintly. "Or maybe you're just curious now." Lyra didn't answer. She didn't want to admit it, but he was right. Something about this human pulled her closer. His emotions, though painful, had a strange beauty that she couldn't explain. She raised her hand again, ready to read his mind, but this time she hesitated. Evan noticed. "It's okay," he said gently. "You can look. I don't hide from my memories anymore." She placed her fingers on his forehead once more, and the world around her dissolved. This time the vision came stronger, more vivid, more painful. She saw a battlefield burning under a blood-red sky. She saw soldiers, young, scared, running for their lives. Explosions tore the ground apart, and screams filled the air. She saw Evan, covered in dust and blood, trying to drag a wounded friend to safety. His hands were trembling, his breath ragged. "Stay with me," he shouted, but the man in his arms went still. Lyra's chest tightened. She could feel Evan's, emotions flooding into her, grief, guilt, and anger all mixed together. He kept fighting, kept saving others, even when he was bleeding himself. Every time someone fell, he whispered their names as if to keep them alive just a little longer. When the battle ended, he stood alone among the bodies of his team. The silence was deafening. He fell to his knees, hands shaking. "I'm sorry," he whispered in the memory. "I tried. I really tried." Lyra couldn't breathe. The pain was unbearable, as if it were her own. Her heart pounded. She had never known emotion this strong, this raw. She broke the connection suddenly and stepped back, her face pale. Her voice trembled. How do you carry all of that?" Evan looked at her quietly. "You don't carry it," he said softly. "It carries you. The pain reminds me that I'm still alive. That they mattered." Lyra stared at him. "But it hurts so much." He nodded. "Yeah, it does. But if you stop feeling it, you stop being human." Those words hit her deeper than any mental link ever could. She realized that humans didn't hide from pain. They lived with it, learned from it, and somehow turned it into strength. That night, Lyra couldn't sleep. She sat alone in the observation chamber, replaying everything she saw. The Ailari code said emotions were dangerous, that they destroyed rational thought. But Evan's emotions didn't destroy him. They defined him. He was broken yet unbroken, fragile yet strong. The next day she visited him again, not as a researcher but as something closer to a friend. Evan greeted her with a tired smile. "So, did you find what you were looking for?" She shook her head slowly. "I found something else instead." "What's that?" "The truth," she said softly. "Humans are not weak because they feel. You are strong because you do." He chuckled quietly. "You sound like you're starting to believe that." She didn't answer, but her silence said enough. Evan leaned back on the bed, eyes looking toward the ceiling. "You know what hurts most?" he said after a pause. "Not the loss. It's remembering their faces every night and still having to wake up without them." Lyra lowered her gaze. "You still hope, don't you?" He nodded. "Always. Hope's the one thing they couldn't kill out there." Her chest tightened again. She didn't know what this feeling was. It wasn't pity. It was something softer, heavier, and unfamiliar. She wanted to understand it. Before she left, Evan looked at her and said, "You know, Lyra, Maybe you're learning faster than you think. When she walked back to her quarters, her heart felt heavy but warm. The stars outside the window shimmered faintly, like tears frozen in the night sky. For the first time, she didn't see them as distant points of light. She saw them the way humans did, as dreams waiting in the dark. And in that moment, Lyra realized something extraordinary. She had entered Evan's mind to study what made him human. But now his humanity was slowly awakening hers. Days passed quietly in the medical station. Lyra continued to visit Evan every morning. What began as a research duty slowly turned into something far more personal. She no longer carried her data tablet or recorder. She just came, sat by his side, and listened. Evan would talk for hours about life on Earth, about cities full of lights, about families waiting at home, about laughter around a dinner table. Lyra listened carefully, eyes wide with wonder. Her world had never known such things. The Ilari didn't have families. Children were created in labs raised by instructors. They didn't have songs or stories, only knowledge. When Evan spoke, she could feel his memories like warmth seeping into her cold heart. "You humans," she said once, "you find meaning in everything, even in pain." Evan chuckled softly. "Yeah, it's kind of our curse and our gift." She looked down, thinking. "My people would say it's illogical." He smiled. "Maybe. But logic doesn't hold you when you're breaking. Love does." The word love felt strange to her and heavy, mysterious. It echoed in her mind like a note from a song she didn't yet understand. She wanted to know what it meant, not just in thought but in feeling. That evening she asked Evan to tell her more about love. He laughed shyly. "You really want to know that? It's complicated." "I learn by understanding," she said seriously. He leaned back and thought for a moment. "Love is when someone's happiness matters more than your own. When you'd rather get hurt than see them hurt." She frowned gently. "That sounds painful." He nodded. "Yeah, but it's also beautiful, because it means you care." Lyra stared at him for a long time. No Ilari would ever choose pain willingly. Yet here was this man, teaching her that pain and love were two sides of the same truth. It confused her, but it also fascinated her. That night when she connected her mind to his again, something different happened. This time she didn't dive deep into his memories. Instead, she let the connection stay shallow, like two souls standing side by side. Through the link, she felt warmth radiating from him, a steady light surrounded by sadness. It was gentle, safe, and real. She didn't see words or images. She felt his kindness, his patience, his quiet strength. Evan noticed her eyes soften and smiled. "You feel it, don't you?" "Yes," she whispered. "It's peaceful." "That's your heart starting to listen," he said softly. Lyra blinked, uncertain. "Hearts don't listen. They only beat." He laughed quietly. "Oh, they do more than that, Lyra. Sometimes they understand what the mind can't." Those words stayed with her. The next day she found herself watching the sunrise from the window. The colors painted the sky, gold, pink, and blue. She had seen hundreds of dawns before, but never like this. This time it made her chest feel tight, almost full. Maybe this was what humans called beauty. When Evan saw her there, he smiled. "You like the sunrise? It's alive," she said softly. "It feels like it's breathing." "That's because you're seeing it with more than your eyes now," he replied. "You're feeling it." Later, he showed her something new, music. He played a small device and a soft melody filled the room. It was slow, emotional, almost sad. Lyra closed her eyes, letting the notes wash over her mind. She could feel each sound tug gently at her heart. When it ended, she opened her eyes slowly. "Why does it hurt?" she asked quietly. "Because it reminds you that you have a heart," Evan said. "And that's a good thing." She smiled faintly, the first real smile she had ever made. "Then I want to keep it," she whispered. From that day on, Lyra no longer came to study Evan. She came to understand him. And in the quiet moments between their talks, something invisible began to grow. She didn't have a word for it yet. It wasn't logic or curiosity. It was deeper, softer, human. One evening, as the light dimmed and shadows danced across the room, Evan said, "You know, Lyra, sometimes I think you're teaching me too." Her silver eyes lifted. "Me, what could I teach you?" He smiled sadly. how to see the world like it's new again. Lyra didn't respond, but inside her something bloomed, small and bright, like the first spark of a star. For the first time, she didn't just read his mind. She felt his soul, and that night, as she lay awake staring at the ceiling, she finally whispered to herself, "I think I'm beginning to understand what it means to be human." The change in Lyra didn't go unnoticed. The other Alari scientists at the facility began whispering about her. She smiled more. She asked questions no Alari had ever asked before, about feelings, art, and love. To her people, these were dangerous topics. Emotions were seen as contamination, a sickness that blurred logic. When her supervisor, Commander Thalen, called her in, his voice was cold. "Lyra," he said, his eyes narrowing, "your recent reports lack precision. You are describing human emotions instead of measurable data. Explain yourself," Lyra hesitated. "I believe emotions are essential to understanding humans. They are not just impulses, they are their way of living." Thalen's expression turned hard. "You speak as if you envy them." She looked down. "I do not envy. I only wish to understand. Be careful," he warned. "You are here to study them, not become one of them." Those words echoed in her mind long after she left his office. But even as she tried to silence them, her thoughts went back to Evan, his voice, his laughter, his endless courage. That evening, she found him sitting outside the research dome, watching the stars. The wind carried the scent of rain, and the sky shimmered with distant lightning. "You're not supposed to be out here," she said softly. Evan smiled. "Neither are you." She sat beside him. For a while, neither of them spoke. The world felt quiet and infinite. "Evan," she whispered finally, "do you ever stop feeling? Does it ever fade?" He shook his head. "No, it just changes shape. Sometimes it hurts less, sometimes more, but it never goes away." She turned to him. "My people believe feelings destroy logic. And what do you believe?" he asked gently. Lyra looked up at the stars. "I believe logic without feeling is empty." Evan's eyes softened. "Then you're already more human than most humans I know." The words warmed her heart and frightened her at the same time. When she returned to her quarters that night, she stared at her reflection. Her silver eyes, once cold and clear, now shimmered faintly with emotion. Her pulse felt quicker, her chest heavier. These sensations were unfamiliar but not unwelcome. Still, deep down, fear crept in. What if her people found out? What if they erased what she was becoming? The next day, when she connected her mind with Evan's again, the link felt stronger than ever. She didn't see pain this time. She saw memories of joy. He was sitting by a campfire with his friends, singing, laughing, smiling under the night sky. The warmth of those moments wrapped around her like a blanket. She whispered through the link, "Why do you humans love so much even when it hurts?" Evan's voice in her mind was soft. "Because love makes the pain worth it." Lyra felt her throat tighten. "Is that why you fight? For love? For love, for hope for each other. That's what keeps us going." Tears welled in her eyes. Tears she didn't know she could even shed. The connection flickered as her emotions overflowed. She broke the link and stepped back, trembling. Evan reached out, his hand hovering just above hers. "Hey, you okay?" She nodded weakly. I don't understand. When I feel your memories, it hurts. But it also makes me alive," he smiled. "That's exactly what being human is, Lyra. Feeling alive, and even when it hurts." Something deep inside her broke open then. She reached out and gently touched his hand. For the first time, their connection didn't come from her mind. It came from her heart. A silent warmth flowed between them, soft and real. But at that same moment, the door behind them slid open with a sharp hiss. Commander Thalen stood there, his expression frozen in shock. "Lyra," he said, his voice like ice, "what have you done?" She turned, her heart pounding. Evan stood protectively in front of her. "Don't blame her," he said firmly. "She's learning. She's feeling. Isn't that what you wanted?" Thalen's voice hardened. "No. I wanted understanding, not corruption." He raised his hand toward Lyra. "You will return for decontamination." Lyra's eyes widened in fear. "No, please," Evan stepped forward, standing between them. "You'll have to go through me first." Thalen's voice was cold and final. "Then so be it." As the alarms began to echo through the station, Lyra felt her chest tighten. She had touched humanity, and now it might cost her everything. Yet even as the chaos began, one truth burned inside her. She would rather die feeling than live empty ever again. The alarms echoed through the corridors like the beating of a metallic heart. Red lights flashed across the walls, painting everything in panic and fear. Lyra stood frozen as armed Elari guards entered the room. Their faces were cold, expressionless, just as hers used to be. Evan stepped forward, his fists clenched. "You can't take her," he shouted. "She's not a threat." Commander Thalen didn't even blink. "She is compromised. Her emotions have infected her reasoning. She will be taken for cleansing immediately." "Cleansing?" Evan repeated, his voice sharp with disbelief. "You mean you'll erase her mind?" "That is the only way to restore order," Thalen said coldly. Lyra's voice trembled. "Please, Commander, I can explain." But he silenced her with a gesture. "You've broken every rule of the Alari Code. You allowed emotional interference. You touched a human mind, and worse, you let it touch you." Two guards stepped closer, their energy cuffs glowing faintly blue. Evan moved quickly, standing between them and Lyra. "You'll have to go through me first." One of the guards raised a weapon, but Thalen stopped him. "Do not harm the human," he ordered. "Our alliance forbids it. Restrain the subject only." Lyra felt a storm inside her chest. She wanted to scream, to fight, but her body wouldn't move. All she could do was watch as the guards pushed Evan aside and took hold of her arms. Evan shouted her name. "Lyra, don't let them take you." Her eyes met his, silver and blue, two worlds colliding. "I'll come back," she whispered, though she didn't believe it. "I promise." The guards pulled her away and the door closed behind them. Evan stood there, breathing hard, his hands shaking. He had faced death before, but this helplessness, hurt more than any wound. Lyra was taken to the upper decks where the light was sterile and cold. They locked her inside a transparent chamber surrounded by machines that hummed with quiet menace. A faint mist filled the air, and she could feel her thoughts slipping, piece by piece. She heard voices outside the glass. "Prepare for mental purge," Thalen said. "Erase all emotional corruption." "No," she whispered weakly. "Please." Her heart raced. The world around her began to blur. She felt her connection to Evan fading, like a light flickering in darkness. Desperately, she reached out with her mind. A final telepathic link, fragile and faint. "Evan, can you hear me?" Far away in his locked room, Evan froze. Her voice echoed in his head, soft and trembling. "Lyra? Where are you? They're erasing me." Her mental voice was fading. "I don't want to forget you." Evan pressed his hands against the metal wall. "Then don't. Fight it. Remember what I taught you. Remember what it means to feel." Her pulse quickened. Through the haze, she saw flashes, his smile, his laughter, the music they shared, the sunrise they watched together. She clung to those memories like they were her lifeline. Tears rolled down her cheeks. "Evan," she whispered aloud, "why do you fight for me?" His voice echoed in her mind, strong and full of warmth. "Because that's what humans do. We fight for those we love." That word, love, burned through her fading thoughts like fire. It wasn't just an emotion now. It was power. It was defiance. The machine lights began to flicker. Lyra's pulse surged as she poured all her will into that one feeling. She wouldn't let them erase it. She wouldn't lose him. Outside the chamber, alarms blared again. The system overloaded, sparks flying from the control panels. Thalen shouted orders, but it was too late. Lyra's telepathic surge shattered the containment field. The glass cracked, then shattered completely. Lyra fell to the floor, gasping for air. Her mind burned, her heart racing, but she was still herself. The guards rushed in, but she lifted her head weakly. Her voice was soft, but every word carried strength. "You cannot erase what I've learned," she said. "You cannot erase what it means to feel." Before they could reach her, human security forces stormed the room, led by Evan. His uniform was torn, His face streaked with determination. He ran to her side, holding her trembling hands. "I've got you, Lyra. You're safe." She looked up at him, tears glimmering in her silver eyes. "I didn't forget," she whispered. "Not even for a second." Evan smiled through his exhaustion. "That's my girl." Behind them, the alarm still screamed, the facility trembling with chaos. But in that moment, none of it mattered. All that mattered was that she had chosen, not logic, not duty, but love. And in doing so, she had done the most human thing of all. The chaos slowly faded into silence. Smoke drifted through the broken chamber as sparks danced from shattered cables. Lyra lay on the cold floor, her body trembling, her vision blurred. Evan knelt beside her, his hand gently brushing the metallic strands of her silver hair away from her face. "You're okay," he whispered. "I've got you." She tried to smile, but her lips barely moved. "You shouldn't have come," she said weakly. "They'll punish you." Evan shook his head, his eyes burning with quiet fire. "I couldn't just let them take you. That's not who I am." Lyra's chest ached, not from pain, but from something deeper. Something she couldn't quite name. "You risked everything," she whispered. He nodded. "That's what humans do for someone they care about." She looked into his eyes and felt something shift inside her. Something powerful and alive. It was as if her heart, once made of glass and reason, now beat with warmth and color. Outside the room, the sound of running boots echoed through the halls. Thalen and his guards were coming. Evan helped her to her feet, and together they stumbled through the flickering corridors. Lyra could feel the others, hundreds of Alari minds, stirring in confusion. Her telepathic link to the network had not been fully erased. Instead, it had changed. She could sense emotions rippling through the mental web. Curiosity, fear, even compassion. She gasped. "They're feeling me," she whispered. "They can sense what I feel." Evan looked at her in surprise. "You mean they can feel emotions through you?" "Yes," she said softly, eyes wide. "It's spreading." As they ran, she focused her mind, sending a thought across the psychic field. Not words, but warmth. She sent them the memory of sunlight on her face, of laughter, of kindness, of him. Across the facility, Alari workers paused in their duties. Their eyes widened as strange feelings bloomed in their minds, feelings they had never known. One of them dropped his weapon, clutching his chest as tears fell from his eyes. Commander Thalen felt it too. For the first time in his long, disciplined life, he felt doubt. He felt sorrow, and something else he could not name. "This is impossible," he muttered, pressing his hand to his head. But Lyra's voice reached him, clear and gentle, like a whisper in the wind. "It's not impossible, Thalen. It's human." He froze. Her presence filled his mind, not as an enemy, but as a mirror. And in that reflection he saw himself, cold, lonely, empty. Meanwhile, Lyra and Evan reached the outer platform. The night sky stretched endlessly above them, stars glittering like silver dust. The wind carried the scent of ozone and freedom. She looked back at the city, the great towers of glass and light where her people lived without feeling. "All my life," she said softly, "I thought emotion was weakness, but now I see it's what makes life beautiful." Evan smiled at her. "And messy. Don't forget messy." She let out a weak laugh, her first real laugh. "Yes, messy too." They reached the edge of the platform where an escape shuttle waited. The human rescue team waved from inside. But before Lyra could step in, she turned around. She could feel thousands of minds connected to hers, watching, listening, awakening. "They're scared," she whispered. "They don't understand what's happening to them." Evan stepped closer. "Then show them." She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Her mind opened fully, her consciousness stretching across the network like light spreading through darkness. She didn't send commands or logic. She sent feelings, the warmth of a hug, the ache of loss, the joy of love, the beauty of forgiveness. All over the city, the Alari stopped what they were doing. Some cried, some fell to their knees, some simply stood still, staring at the stars for the first time with wonder in their eyes. Tears rolled down Lyra's cheeks as she whispered, "It's happening. They're feeling." Evan placed a hand on her shoulder. "You did it, Lyra. You gave them what no machine could, a heart." Suddenly, explosions echoed behind them, the facility collapsing as systems overloaded from the telepathic surge. The bridge trembled beneath their feet. "Come on," Evan shouted, pulling her toward the shuttle. They jumped aboard as the doors closed. The shuttle lifted off, racing into the night sky while the world below shimmered with light, not from destruction, but from awakening. Lyra looked out the window, watching the city glow beneath the stars. "Do you think they'll hate me for what I did?" she asked softly. Evan smiled faintly. "No. One day they'll thank you. You didn't destroy them, Lyra. You set them free." She leaned against him, closing her eyes as the ship soared higher. For the first time her mind was quiet, not empty, but peaceful. And deep within her heart, she knew that something extraordinary had begun. The birth of emotion, in a world that had forgotten how to feel. The stars stretched endlessly outside the window of the human rescue ship. Lyra sat quietly beside Evan, her head resting against the glass. Her reflection looked almost human now, her silver eyes softer, her face full of warmth instead of cold perfection. The hum of the engines filled the silence, steady and calm. For the first time in her life, she felt peace. But beneath that peace there was a quiet ache, a question she couldn't ignore. "What will happen to my people now?" she whispered. Evan looked at her. "They'll have to choose," he said softly, "between living as they were or learning what it means to truly be alive." She turned toward him, her voice trembling. "I never wanted to hurt them. I just wanted them to understand, to feel what I felt when I touched your mind." He reached out and gently took her hand. "You didn't hurt them, Lyra. You gave them something priceless, only the ability to feel. That's not destruction. That's rebirth." Her eyes shimmered with tears. "But they'll be lost at first. Emotions are not easy. They burn, they break, they heal, and they confuse." Evan smiled faintly. "Yeah," he said with a little laugh. "That's exactly what makes them worth it." For a long time they sat in silence, watching the stars drift by. Lyra could still sense the faint hum of her people's minds far behind her, no longer cold but flickering with light and life. Some were angry, some were afraid, but many were curious. The first steps of change had begun. After hours of silence, the ship landed at the human outpost. The sky was painted in gold and crimson as dawn broke across the horizon. Lyra stepped out and felt the warmth of sunlight on her skin. Real sunlight. She closed her eyes and smiled, letting the heat sink deep into her chest. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Evan stood beside her, watching her like someone seeing a miracle unfold. "It's even more beautiful because you can feel it now," he said. Lyra turned to him. "You humans, you live every day surrounded by feelings, pain, love, fear, and yet you keep going. I used to think it was chaos, but now I see it's courage," he chuckled softly. "You're learning fast." They walked together along the quiet platform. The human soldiers saluted Evan, but their eyes lingered on Lyra, the alien who had defied her own kind. Not for war, but for something far greater. Later, as the sun dipped low, they stood watching the horizon. The world glowed orange and pink like a painting come alive. Evan turned to her. "So what now?" She thought for a moment. "Now I go back. Not today, not tomorrow, but someday. My people will need guidance. They'll need someone who remembers both logic and emotion, someone who understands what it means to be both Ayalari and human." Evan looked at her, his expression full of quiet pride. "And you'll do it." "I know you will," she smiled softly. "Will you wait for me?" He hesitated, not just long enough for her to notice. Then he nodded. "Always." There was something deeply human in that single word. Not a promise of forever, but a hope that never gives up. Night came. The stars reappeared, glittering across the dark sky. Lyra looked up at them and felt something stir deep inside her. Connection, belonging, wonder. She spoke softly, almost to herself. When I first read your mind, I thought I was seeing weakness, pain, confusion, but what I really saw was strength. You humans are strong because you feel. Evan stepped closer, his voice low. And you're human now, too, Lyra. At least in the ways that matter most. Tears filled her silver eyes, catching the starlight. If that's true, she whispered, then maybe there's hope for all of us. The wind moved softly through her hair as she leaned against him. The night was quiet, not empty but full of life. Somewhere far away, her people were changing, and deep inside her heart she knew the universe itself would never be the same again. Lyra had come to study humanity, but in the end humanity had taught her the greatest lesson of all, that love, in its fragile, imperfect form, was the most powerful force in existence. And as the two of them stood beneath the endless stars, a new story began, and not of aliens and humans, but of hearts that finally learned to beat in the same rhythm.